What's up everybody, it is Dan Cam, and I am back with another tutorial. And today I'm going to be showing you how to clone and replace the current M.2 NVMe SSD hard drive that's in your system with a brand new one. So this is going to be the hard drive in your system that has Windows on it, your current boot drive. Then at the end of the video, I'll also show you how to clean up and completely erase all the contents on the drive that you're going to be cloning. And guys, this video is pretty long and some parts of the video may not apply to your specific situation. So skim through and use the chapters down below to find all the information you need. But I feel that there's a lot of good information in a lot of the chapters, so I recommend watching all the way through, but you can skip through if you want. But guys, without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get into it. All right guys, so let's get into what you're going to need and a few notes on this process. So firstly, you're gonna need a new hard drive. Duh, it'd be kind of important. That's probably why you're watching this video. You got a new hard drive, but we got our new hard drive down here. And then there's two ways to clone your current boot drive over to your new one. So I've got an NVMe M.2 drive. So on some motherboards, they have one M.2 NVMe slot, some have two, some have three, some have four. So if you have more than one, what you can do is you can plug your new drive into one of the empty slots on your motherboard, and then you can clone the current drive over to this one, or a lot of motherboards only have one slot. So if that's the case, you can't just plug this in to an open one and clone it over. So what you're gonna need is an M.2 NVMe enclosure, or if you're using a 2.5 inch SSD or a 3.5 inch HDD, they do make different enclosures for that. So you can basically plug in your new hard drive into the enclosure. Then with one of the included cables, this one has a USB-C to USB-C, and then a USB-C to a USB type A. So you basically plug in your new drive into the enclosure, and then from there you can use one of the provided cables to plug that into an available USB-C or USB type A port. And then by doing that, the computer recognizes it as an additional hard drive, and then you can go ahead and begin the cloning process. So that's actually all you're gonna need. And even if you have an available M.2 slot, one of these is super clutch, because if the drive that's currently in your system, you might not need it or you're not planning to use it, you can actually use this as an external hard drive. So once that hard drive is out of the system, I'm gonna go ahead and plug it into here. And then it's got, I don't have them with me right here, but it's got heat pads, so it'll keep the M.2 NVMe nice and cool. And then I'm just gonna leave it in the enclosure, and it's gonna be an external hard drive, an extremely fast external hard drive. So I went with one of these enclosures, and it's not too expensive. So even if you have an open M.2 slot, it's a really good idea to pick one of these up, because you never know when you're gonna need it. And it's a good thing just to kind of have. I think it was like $18, so it's not too expensive. So that's all you're gonna need. So let's jump over into a few notes on this install. So on to a few notes for the process. So the first one is that for my machine, I'm going from a Gen 3 1 terabyte NVMe drive over to a Gen 4 2 terabyte hard drive. So this hard drive is obviously a larger capacity, and the read and write speeds for this thing are absolutely crazy. Gen 4 hard drives have come down majorly in price, which is the main reason why I went with this guy. So because this is a larger drive, even if that 1 terabyte drive was completely full of information, obviously all the contents for that will fit on this one. So it makes the cloning process easy because everything will fit over. But if for some reason you're going from a large capacity drive to a smaller one, you obviously want to make sure the contents of your old drive are going to fit on your new one. And it does make the process in Macrium Reflect, which is the program we're going to be using, a little bit different. And I'll go ahead and link a video down below if you're doing it that route, if you're going from a larger capacity to a smaller capacity for some reason. So just keep that in mind, that if you've got a 1 terabyte drive and you're going to like a 512 gigabyte, Obviously, all the contents of that are not going to fit on the 512. So just be mindful of that. The next note I want to make, I got some notes over here. You're not going to need a new copy of Windows. We're basically doing a complete clone. So this drive is just going to be a complete clone of that drive. So Windows, everything I have stored on there is going to be on here. So you will not need a new copy of Windows. And also another note is if you're a little afraid of this process or you feel like you're going to mess something up, it's never a bad idea to back up your data. So if you're worried you're going to mess up the drive or something's going to happen, go ahead and back up your data just to be safe. It's never a bad idea to do a full backup of your data. And the last note I want to make is for this one, we're doing an M.2 NVMe drive, but this will actually work for any kind of drive. So if your boot drive is on a 2.5 inch SSD or even on a 3.5 inch HDD, a mechanical drive, this process will work. But if you're going to like from a 3.5 inch to a 2.5 inch drive or a 2.5 inch to an NVMe drive, you may have to go into your BIOS and change the boot priority because it's most likely going to want to boot to whatever old drive you had. So just keep that in mind. We're going from a smaller to a larger capacity drive. You will not need a new copy of Windows. It's never a bad idea to back up your data, and this process will basically work for any kind of boot drive that you'll be copying. So on that note, I think we covered just about everything. So let's go ahead and let's start getting into the process of cloning my old hard drive. Okay guys, so scenario one is if you're going to be using an enclosure to do this process. So we've got our enclosure right here, and we're going to go ahead and open it. And then on this side, you can see this is where our M.2 NVMe is going to plug into. We've got 3 different length holes depending on how long your hard drive is. And then with this enclosure, we've got a little heat pad that you should use if you're going to make this a permanent solution. So if it's going to live in this enclosure probably permanently, I would consider using the heat pad. If you're just doing a transfer, I'd probably still recommend doing it, but it's not as vital as if it's going to be living in there all the time. So like I said, this is the hard drive that I'm going to be installing. It has a built-in heatsink, so it makes this process with the enclosure a little awkward. And then I also do have a normal NVMe drive that I can show you the process too. So let's show you how it's going to be for my drive that I'm installing if anybody just decides to go this exact route. So we've got our enclosure. We're just going to kind of put it at a little bit of an angle. And then all we're going to do is you can see it's lined up right there. And then all we're going to do is just push it into place. And then this is how I'm going to plug the enclosure into my system. So we're going to use the included USB type A because my case currently does not have a USB-C connection. So this is what's going to get plugged into my system. And then we can start the cloning process. But let's just say your hard drive doesn't have a heatsink. It's going to be pretty much the same process, and I would highly recommend following your manual because your enclosure may be different than mine. So just follow this pretty much to a T. So for a temporary solution, you can just grab your drive and just plug it in. And then, so now that's in. You could just do it like this, and this should be okay. But you may want to monitor the temps of it just to be sure. But how you're supposed to install it in the enclosure is it's going to come with this little brass fitting. And the NVMe is going to slide into the middle of this brass fitting. So let me show you this. So we've got the edge of our M.2 right here, and our brass fitting is just going to fit in there. Let's see, come on. So that's how it's going to look right there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to grab our little screw, and then it's in the back. You can see right where my index finger is, that's where it's going to plug in or screw in. So I got that. Let's just screw this in. I'm holding this at a very awkward angle. See if I can get this. So there we go. It's screwing in, and I apologize if this is not like fully focused. So the drive is in. secured. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna use your heat pad. And then once the heat pad is installed, you can slide the enclosure over and then you're good to go. So that would be as if you're permanently installing in here. And it's probably a good idea to do that even for this because who knows how long it's gonna take to copy all of your stuff over. It shouldn't be too long, but to be safe, you wanna use this heat pad and then you can slide the enclosure over and then use one of the provided cables to plug it into the computer. Okay, so I think I pretty much showed you everything for this scenario. So let's go ahead and jump into scenario 2, whereas if you have an open slot on your motherboard. Okay guys, so scenario 2 is gonna be if you have an open M.2 NVMe slot on your motherboard. So first taking a look at my system, you can see that the graphics card has been removed. I went ahead and removed it, and I'm not gonna go through this process because I did an entire video on how to uninstall your drivers for your GPU, remove and install your new graphics card, and I'll go ahead and link that in the top right if you need help with removing that, because you'll notice on my machine, the open M.2 slot down here is actually underneath my graphics card. So I had to remove it in order to get access to this. So now that we've got access to it, the only thing you really need to keep an eye out for is it most likely will be installed on your motherboard already, but you need to have a standoff right here. So depending on the length of your hard drive, you need to have a standoff in there, and then you need to have the screw that goes with the standoff. So this is how we're gonna secure the drive to the motherboard. And it's gonna screw in to this standoff that's been installed down here. And I'll get better pictures of this and I'll throw them up on the screen with this. So like I said, this is the drive that's gonna be going in to the system that's replacing my current boot drive. But here is a drive that does not have a heatsink. So they're basically identical. You can see they have the same slots right here, and that's what secures the drive to the motherboard standoff, but they're basically identical. This one is Gen 3, this one's Gen 4, but I mean, they're pretty much identical with everything else. So I'll show you the drive that's going in. It's the same process as the other one. So let me get this to focus down here. And then on our receiving end, I'll call it our connection for the hard drive, you'll see that it slides in nice and easy, and you just want to line up this notch on here with this connection on the board. So what we're gonna do is come down here, line up those connections, and then I'm kind of far away, so it's a little difficult for me to do this. So boom, that just clicked in nice and easily. And then our drive is sitting against the standoff. So we're gonna grab our small screw again. And I know that didn't focus for you, but let's just go ahead, screw this in. And then our drive is installed and we're ready to reinstall the graphics card and begin the cloning process. So let me take this out. So there we go. And then I'm gonna take this drive out. And then obviously this one is gonna be pretty much the same method. The only thing I would consider is using a heat sink when using this one in, because this is gonna be directly underneath the graphics card. And even though we're not technically using the graphics card and it's not gonna be pumping out a ton of heat, it's still a good idea because it's directly under it. So strongly consider using a heatsink if you're gonna plug this in. But I'll show you this one real quick. Same exact process. Line it up with the holes on the port. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab your little screw again. And then we're just gonna, this one you might have to push down the drive a little bit. You can see it's got a little bit of movement. So just hold it down, screw it in, and this will secure the drive to the motherboard. And then like I said, guys, you wanna use a heatsink for these things. They run really warm. So I think that's gonna do it. So let's move on to the next process, and that's booting it up with either the enclosure with your new drive in it or with your new drive in your open slot. Okay guys, we are now taking a look at my desktop, and as of right now, we have our new M.2 NVMe drive either plugged into an open slot on our motherboard, or we have it plugged into the NVMe enclosure. And that NVMe enclosure is connected to the computer by the included Type-C cable or the Type-A cable. My motherboard and my case actually do not have a Type-C connection, so I am using Type-A, but I'd always recommend using Type-C if you can, because it'll actually clone a little bit faster, but Type-A will work just fine if you don't have a Type-C connection. So now that our new drive is connected to the PC, the first thing we're going to want to do is right-click our Start button, and we're going to go to Disk Management. And once we do, you're going to be met with this prompt right here that says Initialize Disk. And then all we're going to do is select OK. And then once you do, we're actually done in disk management. And then if you scroll down right here, we can see our unallocated disk that we're going to be cloning to. So this is my boot drive. This is my mass storage. And this is the drive that's plugged into the motherboard or our NVMe enclosure. This is our new drive. So we don't need to do anything else in disk management. I'm just showing you my current drives. So let's exit out of here. And then let's go to our browser of choice and go to our search engine of choice and type in Macrium Reflect. And then once you do, the first option is going to be macrium.com. And this is going to be the software that we're going to use to do this cloning process. And it is completely free. And this program's awesome. I love it. It works super well. So let's go ahead and click into here. And then once you do, we're going to scroll down a little bit and you're going to see Reflect 8 free. So you're going to go ahead and download it, install it. And there's nothing really special about the install process. There's no options you really need to look out for. Just go ahead and install it, select all the prompts. And then once you do, you're good to go. And we're going to close out of our browser. And I created a desktop icon to make it easy. So let's go ahead and click on Macrium Reflect. So that's going to go ahead and open. Let me make sure my webcam's not blocking it. Okay. So looking at Macrium Reflect, we don't need to do anything up here. We're just going to focus down here. And my first piece of advice would be to write down each of your drives and what they're called. You can see it's a super long name, but just for the cloning process, and especially later, if you're planning on erasing the drive that you're cloning, like the one that's coming out, I'd recommend writing down the drive. So if you erase it, you do not erase the wrong one. So for future use, and it's just good knowledge to have which drive is which and what it's called, I would highly recommend just going through and just kind of noting down which drive is which. So let's go through mine. So you can see when I click on the middle one or look at the middle one, you can see that it's 1 terabyte. We've got this Windows icon right here. So this is the drive that my Windows operating system is currently installed on. And this top one is our 2 terabyte, 2.5 inch SATA SSD that I have. And this one's actually going to be phased out pretty soon. I'm probably going to be getting rid of this and putting it in another system. So just keep an eye on which drive is which and know which drive is which so you clone the right one first of all. And then later on, like I said, if you're planning on erasing any of the drives to clean it up, you want to know which drive is which. So this is our boot drive. This is our mass storage. And then this is the new drive. You can see it's completely empty. There's nothing on here. So what we're going to do is select the drive that we want to clone. And that's going to be this middle one. And just make sure you double check that this Windows operating system icon's there. So that is our current boot drive. And we're going to go ahead and select clone this disk. And that's going to bring up this pop-up. And so we have our source drive and then the destination drive. So this is the drive we're going to be cloning. And then this is the disk that we're going to clone to. So what we're going to do is select a disk to clone to little prompt right here. And then that's going to bring up these two drives. So these are the two drives we can copy to. So we don't want to copy it onto our mass storage. We want to copy it onto our new one. So we're going to go ahead and select this one. And then, like I said, double check this, triple check this multiple times to make sure you're cloning the right one. But once you got that all figured out and you're good to go ahead and click here. So this is going to select all partitions on this drive. So it's going to copy everything that is on my current boot drive. And that's going to copy everything onto here. So once we do that, we can go ahead and click next, and we don't need to schedule the clone. You can if you want to, but I'm not going to go over that. So let's go ahead and click next. And then this will just show you a cloning summary of which one you're cloning and the 4 partitions and all that good stuff. But now we're going to go ahead and click finish. And then once you do, it's going to say, what do you want to do now? Just go ahead and leave this all how it is. And then once you click OK, it's going to take you through the cloning process, and it may take a while. So just keep that in mind. And I'd recommend just leaving your PC idle and not doing anything on the PC. Just leave it how it is. Don't touch it, and just wait for it to finish. So let's go ahead and select OK. Okay, guys, so the clone is about to finish right now. And as soon as it's done, it's going to give you the time it took. And you're just going to go ahead and click OK. And then once you do, you can go ahead and click Close within Macrium Reflect. And we are good to go. The drive is completely cloned. So now comes the part where we swap out our old SSD for the new one. All right, guys, so the cloning process has finished and it was successful. And one thing I didn't mention is you're gonna wanna make sure you disconnect this hard drive properly. And to do that, before removing it from the PC, you're gonna go down into your task tray in the bottom right, and you're gonna see a little icon that kind of looks like a flash drive. And you're gonna wanna go ahead and right click on that, and then you're gonna wanna eject that hard drive. And then once you do that, you can go ahead and remove the NVMe enclosure from your PC. Because if you just rip this out of the PC without doing that, it could cause issues. So just make sure you do it the proper way and eject the hard drive before removing the enclosure from a USB port. So guys, just to give you an idea of time, it took me about 4 hours to completely clone this drive. And I have about 600 gigabytes worth of data. So I'd recommend going through your system and maybe uninstalling some programs or games you're not currently using. I had about 200 gigabytes of games that I'm not currently playing. So I should have deleted those before doing this process, but I was thinking about the video. So it took me about 4 hours to fully finish this process. So guys, the time has come to finally put our new drive into the system. So let's cut over to that. Then we'll boot it up, and then there's a couple more things I want to show you, but let's go ahead and swap this bad boy over. Okay guys, so we are back at my desktop and everything is working smoothly. And like I said in my little note in that past clip, the first boot might take a little bit longer than normal, but all boots after that should be completely normal speed. It took me maybe about 5 or 10 seconds longer than my normal boots, but every boot after that was normal speed. So that's completely normal if you see it's kind of struggling and taking a while to load. And then as you can see, by the drive that came out, it's solely working off of the clone drive. So everything was successful. All of my files are here. We're good to go. But there is one more thing we need to do. So I'm going to show you something real quick. And what we're going to do is right click on your start menu button. And we're going to go to disk management like we did earlier. Let me bring this up here. And then if you look here, you can see my 2.5 inch SATA SSD drive. And then we've got our new drive down here, but you can see there's actually a problem. So only 1 terabyte is able to be used. Then we have 1 terabyte of unallocated space. So you can see that there's a recovery partition in here that we want to keep, but you can see it's sandwiched in between. So that actually generates a problem because normally you're able to right click on your C partition, and then you can do extend this volume, and then it will occupy all of that unallocated space. But Windows is stupid, disk management is stupid, and it sandwiches it in between, and you can't move it from here. So that creates a problem. So we unfortunately have to rely on some third-party software. And once again, it is free to use and super simple. So I'll go over that. So let's go ahead and close out of disk management, and I'll show you what to do next so we can move this recovery partition over to the right, and then we can extend this volume. So let's go ahead and exit out of disk management. And then what you're going to want to do is type in mini tool partition wizard. And then that's going to bring you this search result. And there are a ton of programs that do this for free, but I decided to go with this one. So you're going to go to this website and you're going to download it and install it. And guys, this program is a little spammy. There are some ads because it is free. So as soon as you're done using it, you can delete it, but you might get some pop-ups, unfortunately, but it works really, really well. And they do have a pro version, but unless you're using it, frequently, the free one works just fine. So download it, install it. I'm not going to show the install process, but I would kind of look out through the process for some box to check and some box to uncheck, because some of them, they'll check it in for you, but it's like a program you might not need. So I would just recommend downloading Mini Tool Partition Wizard, the free version. So once you get that installed and you're ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and close out of my browser, and we're going to go ahead and launch Mini Tool Partition. And then once we do, you can see it looks very similar to disk management. We've got our 2 drives right here, and there is a disclaimer I want to make. I would strongly recommend keeping this available. So just in case you make a mistake or something happens, you can always go back to this drive, which has all of your files on it in Windows. So just in case you make a mistake or something happens, or the power goes out while you're doing this, or something crazy happens, you have a backup and you can plug this back in and you can clone this back over to the drive again if you need to. So hold on to this, or if you want to, you can make a complete backup of your system. Like I said, it's always good to do a backup before something like this. So just keep that in mind. Keep this handy just in case you make a mistake, or God forbid something happens and you corrupt Windows, or who knows what might happen. So keep a backup ready, or the drive that you originally cloned. Okay, so getting to Mini Tool Partition Wizard, we can see our drives down here. And once again, we can see the recovery partition sandwich between our C partition and then our unallocated space. So it's super simple to move this to the right and extend this volume. So we're going to click on the partition first. Then we're going to go to Move Resize Partition. So go ahead and click on this. And then what you're going to do is you're going to drag the slider all the way over to the right. And then once you click OK, you can see it is now over to the right. And then these changes aren't permanent as of right now. If you made a mistake or moved the wrong one, you can always click undo and it will take you back to square one. It's only when you click apply that these settings will be set in stone. So just keep that in mind. So now we've got our recovery partition over to the right, and you can see we finally got our unallocated space next to our drive. So what we're going to do now is click our C partition, and then we're going to go back into Move Resize Partition. And then instead of moving this one, we're actually going to drag this slider right here to fully extend it. So grab the arrow and then bring it all the way out. And then you can see we're finally going to get all of our space. So just make sure you're at the very end and you're good to go. And then once you do, go ahead and click OK. And you can see our volume has been completely extended. The partition is over to the right and it won't cause any issues. And we're good to go. So once you do that, you're going to go ahead and click apply. And it's going to give you a little disclaimer here if I remember properly. So click apply. Then it says apply pending changes. Note, we strongly recommend you close all other applications before you apply the changes. So close out of all apps just in case something happens, just to make sure this process goes through. So I'm going to go ahead and apply them, and it's going to do its thing. Applied all the pending changes successfully. So we can go ahead and click OK, and then we're going to exit out of this. We're going to restart our computer, and then we're going to go into disk management and make sure the changes actually took place. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I'll meet you guys back at the desktop in about 2 seconds. All right, dudes, so I am back from the restart. So let's go ahead and open disk management and make sure all the changes took place. So once again, right click on your start menu button, click disk management. And this time around, we should see that we have our full drive here, the volume extended with no issues, and we still have our recovery partition. So the process worked fine. So if you want, you can go ahead and remove Mini Tool Partition Wizard. I'm probably going to. I don't use it that often. So everything worked out great, guys. So now we have this extra drive. And I don't really need any of the information on it anymore because it's on that drive. So in the next segment, I'm going to show you how to completely erase all the contents on this drive properly. So let's go ahead and let's get into that. Okay, guys, so we are finally getting to the last part of this video. And what we're going to do now is we're going to completely erase and clean the original drive that was in my system. So my original hard drive that we cloned is in my enclosure now, and it is plugged into the computer, or like we were talking about earlier, you can plug your old SSD into an open slot on the motherboard. And then taking a look at my disk management, we can see my new hard drive setup here. So we've got disk 1, which is my new hard drive. You can see 2 terabytes are available. And then disk 2 is now my old SSD that is plugged into the enclosure. But you can see it's still got our Windows partitions on it and our recovery partition. So we want to get rid of all of this. And doing it through disk management isn't the best. And even if you try to right click on it and delete it, it just does not work. So I'm going to show you a better method to completely wipe it out and get rid of all partitions. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to get out of disk management. So go ahead and close it. Then you're going to go down to your search bar down here and you're going to type CMD for your command prompt. And you're going to go over here and run it as administrator. So once you do that, it's going to bring up this prompt right here. And what you're going to do is you're going to type DISKPART for disk part. So once you click enter, it's going to take a second and then you'll have a disk part little prompt right here. And what you're going to do is list disk. So this is going to show you all of the available drives right now. So we've got disk 0, which is my mass storage, my 2.5-inch SATA SSD. We've got disk 1, which is my new 2 terabyte boot drive that we spent all this time cloning onto. And then disk 2 is the drive we want to erase. And like I was saying earlier, guys, knowing which drive is which is incredibly important, because if you select the wrong drive right here, you'll completely clean the wrong drive. And I do not want you to completely wipe your system by accident. So just know which drive you're selecting when you go to do this next process, because it's irreversible. You cannot get this data back. So just make sure that you're paying attention. So I know for sure it's disk 2 because it's, as of right now, it's the only 1 terabyte one that is showing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click select SEL space DISK 2. So disk 2 is now the selected drive. And then all we're going to do right now is we're going to type in clean, and then we're going to click enter, and it is going to completely clean this drive. So let's go ahead and click enter. It's going to do its thing. It may take a bit. Let's see how long this takes. So we're done. So disk part succeeded in cleaning the disk. So disk 2 is completely erased. We have fully erased all the contents on our old hard drive. So let's go ahead and type in exit to get out of disk part. So leaving disk part, and we are now back at just our normal command prompt. So we're going to go ahead and exit out of here. And then what you're going to do now is you're actually going to go back into disk management. And then as soon as you open disk management, actually, that's okay. Just want to make sure it wasn't blocked. So you can see now we have to initialize disk 2. It's reading it as a brand new drive. There's no partitions on it. So what you're going to do is select GPT. It should already be auto selected, but go ahead and select OK. Then once you do, let me just expand this a little bit to make it easier to see. So now we've got 1 terabyte of unallocated space. So the easiest way to do this is just go ahead and click the drive, right click it, click new simple volume, click next, and then you can assign it a letter if you want to. I'm just going to name it E because it makes sense for my system. I have a C, D, and now an E. So go ahead and click next, and then just leave this all as it is. It should be all okay as it is. Click next, go ahead and click finished, and then boom, we have our drive. It is fully ready to go, and it's still currently formatting, but now it is finished, and we have our new volume E. It's completely erased. All of that original content is gone, and it's on our new cloned drive. So guys, we're good to go. We finally finished everything. I know it was a long video, but there's a lot of things to show, and I wanted to be as accurate as possible and slow and concise to make it easy for you guys. So now that we're done, if you want to go ahead and eject the disk, you can go ahead and right click on your flash drive icon down here, and then you can eject. My enclosure is called the SSK. So you can eject this, and then you can remove your storage, and then now you have a portable, extremely fast SSD drive. So super clutch to have. But yeah, guys, that's going to do it for the video. So let's go ahead and get into the outro. All right, guys, well, that's going to do it for today's video. I hope it was informative, and if it was, please drop a like and subscribe. I have a ton of content that is very similar to this, so check out my channel if you want to see that. And guys, if you have any questions or concerns about anything in this video, please comment down below. I answer 100% of my comments. So if there's any processes that didn't seem clear or I didn't explain well enough, just comment down below and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can so I can help you out. So once again, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys all have a great day, and I'll see y'all in the next video.